I was 30 years old when this started, and now I'm 61. Seems like a blink of an eye to me, but for them, it had to have been just excruciating. My name is Dan Stidham, and I'm one of the authors of A Harvest of Innocence. I worked on the West Memphis Three murder case for the last 31 years. In May, it'll be 32. So time gets away. But I wrote the book because I thought it was important to have a truthful accounting of what actually happened at the trial and what mistakes or omissions or just outright debauchery that the prosecution and the police used to convict these three innocent kids of one of capital murder. He got the death penalty. I could not talk about the things that I talk about in A Harvest of Innocence sooner because I had to be able to get a verdict from the appellate courts in Arkansas in my favor, in my client's favor. So I decided that I didn't need to be pointing out their mistakes and telling it to them to their face in the book, which I don't hold any punches now after this case has reached its legal conclusion. We're still in the process of getting some new DNA done, some new DNA testing through some new DNA technology that wasn't available back in 2007 when we finally broke the case open and proved that it wasn't a satanic ritual homicide, because there's never been a single case of that ever documented on the planet, but because the injuries to the boys' bodies were caused by animal predation, most likely turtles and raccoons, things of that nature, which was misinterpreted by the police, along with the initial autopsy report that made them think that's what happened. And back then, our culture was a lot different than it is today. And of course, there'll be a repeat of this. There always is. It seems like it's on a 300-year cycle. The Arkansas witch trials, as I sometimes refer to them to, happened almost exactly 300 years to the day to the Salem witch trials. And then you can go back even further to medieval times in Europe when the Black Plague took over and killed about 90% of people on the planet. And they didn't understand it. They didn't know what was causing it. So they blamed the supernatural. And there was not a supernatural cause to that. It was fleas on rats coming off the boats, causing the plague. The Salem witch trials, the governor of Massachusetts actually stepped in and put a stop to this craziness, this hanging of witches, burning of witches. They even hung a dog at one point because someone said the dog was a witch. And in reality, what was going on is people were naming their neighbors as witches. And of course, there wasn't a test that you could pass to prove that you weren't a witness. It was basically sign this and we'll probably end up hanging you anyway. In 1985, the FBI stepped in and actually conducted a survey, and were not ever able to find or connect any homicide in the United States to a satanic ritualistic homicide. And that study was replicated in the UK, and it was had similar or exact results. And you can't interrogate children with leading questions and expect to get a truthful answer. And even today, after it's been debunked for years, I still hear on the news about a satanic ritualistic homicide occurring in Florida or someplace else, and it's not what's going on. That's a murder suicide or some sort of dabbling in the occult that doesn't result in a ritual homicide. Unfortunately, Mr. Misskelley, we didn't know this until 10 years after the convictions, but with a qualified expert, something I couldn't get my hands on back during the trial, determined that Mr. Misskelley didn't understand what was going on. He didn't understand why he was there. He didn't understand the role of a lawyer. He didn't know what a lawyer was. He thought I was a lawyer. And he didn't understand that I was there to help him. And he didn't understand the jury's role, the judge's role, the prosecutor's role. And so he wasn't competent to even stand trial. We know that now. Unfortunately, I didn't have the resources to get some of the real heavy hitters in that particular area. But in 2004, due to the many celebrities and others who gave donations from around the world, this has been a worldwide phenomenon, not just a Mid-South region of the United States or the entire United States. The entire world has been infatuated with this case for over 30 years now. One of the kids did get convicted of capital murder. He got the death penalty, Damien Echols, and Mr. Baldwin got life without parole. So essentially, all three of them were going to be in custody until they were dead. But people started mumbling and grumbling about to my wife at church about why is Dan doing this? Why would he get involved in something as horrific as this? And it was horrific. Dr. Michael Baldwin, I kind of stalked him a little bit at a convention of the American Society of Forensic Scientists meeting in San Francisco. I flew out there with the sole purpose of trying to get him to look at my case file, and I eventually was successful in doing that with the help of a forensic entomologist who was interested in the case. And Dr. Bodden, I'll never forget this, he picked up the picture of Christopher Byers, who had been horribly mutilated sexually, and he immediately said, I've done 10,000 autopsies in my career, and these are the worst pictures I've ever seen. And what that means is the jury got to see the worst pictures ever seen by one of the most astute and well thought of forensic pathologists in the world. And by the time Dr. Bodden got involved in the case, at the end, when we destroyed their case, essentially, Dr. Bodden testified he'd done 20,000 autopsies by then, and still these were the worst pictures he'd ever seen. They were just absolutely horrific. But he said, 3 teenagers don't pull this off. This is not anything to do with satanic activity or satanic rituals. This is animal predation, most likely loggerhead turtles.